And welcome to the show. It's Sunday, so we're talking World War I. This week we are in March 1915. Hopefully Farty will show up. If not, well, the show must go on. So MC is here. How are you doing today?
Doing good, doing good. And how are you today in this lovely, wonderful day?
Oh, I'm fine. Kids are loud playing in the kitchen. Sorry about that, everybody, but you know, it is what it is.
Isn't that how it normally is with kids?
Yeah, basically. So set the stage for us, MC.
Okay, we're moving into March now. We're moving into March, and here let me pull this up. With the beginning of March of 1915, and let me share my screen. There we go. And we're going to start talking about as things start to heat up a little bit. And the first part that's heating up, of course, is on the naval side. All right. You'll notice several different things that have happened here. Okay. First of all, you'll notice on March 1st, you have the British blockade. You have the Antivari, all right, bombarded by the Austrian squadron. All right. In other words, the Austrians do have a navy, and I want to point out where the navy is. This is the home port of. Now this is Google Maps, and so it isn't from the time frame, right? But this whole area here is part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, obviously. That includes Bosnia, that includes Croatia and Slovenia, and everything. And the home port for the Austrian Navy is here. Now the Austrian Navy is nowhere near as powerful, all right, as the French Navy is, all right. And what they do is they have sailed out of here, they've come over here, and they basically start shelling some of the French areas here on Malta. I think which one of these is Malta? I don't remember which one of these islands is Malta off the top. But of course, the French respond, and the French fleet's far more powerful. And what happens is they actually end up sinking one of the Hungarian ships, and the rest of them flee and head back into port. And this is where they spend pretty much most of their time, in the city of Pula, what is now Pula, used to be Polo before. And they're going to stay there basically until an event that happens in May. Okay? And the event that happens in May is quite frankly, is when Italy will join the war, right? But they haven't joined it yet. Okay. And then you have the joint declaration signed by Great Britain and France to prevent trade by or with Germany. Basically, they're saying that you can't allow trade with Germany coming through our areas. Now, if you remember correctly, you remember when the ship was seized with from the United States with cotton?
Yeah.
Well, that's basically what they're trying to agree to. They're saying, okay, you can't let the United States just sail to Germany. They're making the rule for themselves. Right. On the 4th, you see several different things, and we'll talk about. I'll show you another map in a little bit here. But you got this. You have the Russians are on the attack. Okay, they are pushing back the Austro-Hungarian forces in Galicia. Okay, so what are we talking about there? We're talking about this area. Okay. And this is obviously, they got the Carpathian Mountains. You can see how rough the terrain is. All right. But this is part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And the Russians, while they are getting their asses basically handed to them by the Germans, against the Austro-Hungarian forces, they're actually more than a match. They're actually winning down here. Okay. So they're actually beating up these forces.
Have they taken any of those passes yet?
No. But they are getting ready, however, and you'll see this here. They're going to get ready, and they're going to seize Przemysl. I know I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly, but you'll notice here. What do you see here? These are all rail lines. Look at how they all intersect into here. So this is an important rail line that they're going to the Russians are going to seize going forward. And you'll see that in just a little bit here. The French have decided that they will help out with the Dardanelles campaign that's getting ready to happen. Okay. The first case of indicator nets, all right, aiding with the destruction of a German submarine. In other words, they have started putting anti-submarine netting to prevent the Germans from just going through the Straits of Dover. Okay. And of course, the Russians, now so you got to think, now, this should tell you something right now. The Russians send a circular telegram to basically the Allied governments, right, laying claim to Constantinople. They're basically already saying, we're going to win. When we win, Constantinople becomes ours. Okay? When you guys win in the Dardanelles and you seize and you help seize this, they're already in the point of trying to carve up their enemies. They're already saying we're going to win this war, and this is how we're going to lay claim to all this stuff ahead of time. On the 5th, you have the Greeks offering to support the Dardanelles. All right.
What are they going to do? Send 100 men?
Well, what they're going to do, and you'll see this, is it. All right. See how on March 7th that the British occupation of Lemos, the Greek government wants an explanation. Let's go back to Google Maps for a second. All right. This is the island that they're talking about. And what has happened is the British, in preparation, they need a pre-staging point, all right, for their push to try and take the Dardanelles through this region. This is the Dardanelles right here, right? And so they need to start pre-staging things. So they actually seize this island from Greece. All right. So what are the Greeks going to do? Basically, they're going to provide a staging point that can be utilized. That's what's going on here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so they're not necessarily sending any forces in to back them up. They're just allowing them access to their territory.
For the most part, but they didn't like the fact that the British just seized this island and didn't tell them that they were going to do it. The British are acting like their normal imperial selves. They're just taking things. Okay. The British bombardment on Smyrna ends. I think Smyrna is in the south, and you see them also. The British government reply at the occupation is a military necessity, right? Because of course the Greeks are not happy with this, and you can understand why, right? I mean, it should be pretty obvious why the Greeks aren't real happy with the.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the United States wouldn't just let that happen.
No, the United States would not, and so this causes a bit of friction, okay, and the British, but of course the British are just basically, there's not much they can do about it, really, when it comes right down to it. But it does cause the Greek government to fall, right, which creates chaos. You'll see the new premier of Greece takes place, right? Then you end up with the Battle of Neuchâtel. Now this is Neuchâtel right here. And they have tried to push a front here to get people to understand. You're talking around in this region right here, where you can see all the gray areas from this. Now I realize that this map covers a large area. Please forgive me, but I'll just point out what's going on. The French army has made a major offensive along this area. This is the Champagne region. This battle is basically wrapping up, right? Well, in order to support them, the British army tries to help out, and in the new Chateau area, right? Nouveau Chateau area. And you can see initially, once again, it looks like a good push, but the British don't follow up fast enough. And of course, the Germans eventually counterattack and basically hold the region, right? So it's really, it really is back and forth. Now, in this battle, the British lose about 10,000 casualties total, all right, to include some Indian sepoys were a part of this, right? And the Germans also lose. They lose about between 5 to 10,000, right? You don't really know for sure. You can settle for around 8 is what it looks like from the records from the German officer at the time, which was the Crown Prince Rupert. All right. He says that they lost approximately, the German Sixth Army was there, and so he says they lose about 8,000 men in casualties. And this is a minor engagement. This is a small engagement compared to the offensive that was taking place, all right, in the Champagne region. And in the Champagne region, depending upon which group you're looking at, the estimated losses by the French forces are close to 200,000 casualties, right? With the Germans suffering 45 to 50,000 casualties in the counterattack, right? And that ends that offensive, that the Champagne offensive ends a little bit later this month. It ends in around, I think, around March 23rd or so.
And the line pretty much stagnates right there, right?
Yep, line still holds, still stagnates. That doesn't go anywhere else, right? March 11th, British retaliatory order in council relating to the detention of enemy goods and proclamation of extending the list of absolute contraband. And you're gonna read about this in a little bit, right? The battle for Neuve Chapelle then ends, right? Which is on the 13th. I'm sorry, I skipped some things. The Dutch government is not happy, all right? It issued a warning that foreign merchant ships flying the Dutch flag will be detained. The British government notified that the Russians of their acceptance of the claims on Constantinople. See, they're already carving up the Ottoman Empire. They've already decided where all this is going to go. Okay? And of course, they have now chosen Sir Ian Hamilton. He's going to be the commander of the expeditionary force for the Dardanelles, all right? Which will turn into Gallipoli, but we're not quite there yet. But you can see where all the planning is taking place. The agreement by the French and Belgian government suspending the Franco-Belgian Convention of July 30th, 1891 regarding military service laws. The Swedish SS Hanna is torpedoed without warning. The first neutral ship actually sunk by British or German submarine. So the Germans are now going with the unrestricted warfare. They are beginning to use it, right? The last of the raiders that were still free from the Germans is the Dresden, and it is sunk by the British warships off Chile, right? You see the Persian. There's a change in the Persian Empire. All right, but the Persians are basically under control for all intents and purposes, by the British. Right. The British squadron at blockade in Samara was withdrawn. The first merchant ship, the SS Blonde, is attacked by aircraft. So now people are finally going, oh, you can use aircraft to attack ships.
Yeah, no, that's interesting too. How are they? Are they dropping bombs or they're just firing?
They're dropping. They're dropping basic, grenade kind of bombs. They're not dropping, what we consider bombing. They're not bombing the way we think of bombing today, right? There's not the plane flying over and it presses the button and the bomb drops out. It doesn't quite go like that. They're small little weapons. For the most part, they're just strafing these ships. A merchant ship is fairly lightly built, right? So it's fairly easy to do this. Now, the next thing is very important. The Allied naval attack on the Dardanelles is repulsed, right? The British and the French ships, all right, they lose ships against these ports. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to force these ports here. There are mines all along this area, okay? And the These forts are much stronger than the British thought they were. Number one, they're taking hits. Yeah, they can reduce them, but as they move in, they hit mines. All right, and so these ships are encountering difficulties trying to force the Dardanelles and get themselves into here. The initial idea was that the Navy would just reduce these areas, they'd flow right on into here, right, and then they'd be able to take out Constantinople, which is right here. Now, of course, it's called Istanbul.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily going according to plan, obviously.
Correct. Another Russian offensive is building, all right, and you see that the Russians are attempting to attack the Germans while the Germans are holding firm, more or less. This memo is not much of a capture, so you can ignore it. The British general John Nixon is appointed commander of the forces of Mesopotamia, and this means that what you're going to be seeing. Let's go back to Google Maps. You're going to see the British forces start to move up and come through here in this area. All right. This is all part, at this point in time, all of this, Baghdad, all of this is part of the Ottoman Turkish Empire. The Turkish Empire owns all of this area, to include, for all intents and purposes, all right, the Arabian Peninsula. Right. Iran, for all intents, is a client state. You can think of it as a client state of the British. Okay. So basically, they more or less stay out of the war. However, against the Ottoman Turks, you're going to see the Mesopotamian campaign start to take place up through here. You've seen the initial seizing that takes place down here. You've seen the initial, the Gulf of Aqaba, right? And then Aden. Where's Aden at? I don't know if they still call it Aden or not. All right, but basically you've seen this. You've also seen the abortive attack against the Suez Canal, right? All this has taken place. They're all falling back now, right? So that's what you're seeing prepping for this portion of it. And then you see this statement right here. The British government concludes an agreement with the American cotton interest that cotton will now be considered contraband. Remember before when they seized that ship, it had U.S. cotton on it, right? That was bound for Germany. The Americans, the British government and Americans now have agreed that if it's, because we were saying cotton is not war stuff. There's no reason for you to be saying cotton is contraband, right? It's not a war material. It's for clothing. Yeah. How could this be a war material? It's true that cotton is often made, and it's the most common use. It's clothing, right? Clothing can be turned into uniforms, etc. Right? But cotton has another useful thing. You've heard of the term gun cotton?
Yeah.
Okay, gun cotton can be used. Cotton can be used as part of it with nitric acid to create explosives. And at this point in time, gun cotton is smokeless powder. This is what people refer to as smokeless powder. Is being used to furnish, to help push the war machines of Europeans. All right, it's a major component. Now, is it of such importance that it can't be, other material can't be substituted for it? No, obviously other materials can be substituted for it. Right? But getting the United States to agree that cotton is contraband was very important. So, on March 19th, you had the Dutch government. They lodged a protest against the blockade policy. Why? Because if you take a look at the map, oh, wrong map. Ooh, whoa. Gotta like Google though. Guess what? This is the Dutch. There being basically no one's able to go sail anything through here. So if an American ship sails on through here and then tries to drop off in Amsterdam, and the Dutch then say, okay, we're going to send it to Germany, it'd be very easy for them to do it. Well, the UK has said no, nothing in here from here all the way through. There will not be anything that they don't approve. So Holland is actually suffering, all right, as much as the Germans are because of this policy. And once again, it is creating. Yes, technically they're part of the Allies. Technically, the Dutch are part of the Allies, but they're suffering as a result of the alliance saying, "Okay, well, we don't trust you enough not to trade with the Germans." That's what they're doing here.
Well, no, and that's pretty ridiculous, actually, considering that they're staying out of the war. They're not supplying either side with anything. And who are the British to tell them that they can't trade with the United States?
Well, and it is, but at the same time, I mean, it's a world war, so the Dutch are basically tolerating it. They don't like it, but they're tolerating it. All right. You basically start to see a blockade beginning to develop in South Africa with the Germans. This is a small action that's inconsequential aside from the fact that it's taking place on the African continent. All right, it's showing you the world dimensions of the war. And then, of course, the British agreed to basically give Greece back the island of Limos, right, which is this, once again, this island right here, and not to give it to Turkey at the end of the war. But you can see how it's strategically placed. You can see one of the reasons why the British have seized it, especially considering that the battleships and stuff that they tried to use to force through here, they need to refit, and they could sail all the way through the Mediterranean, of course. They could sail all the way down here, all right, and then back up to England for refit, or if you use this island, all right, to resupply and refit, at least to a small degree, right here, makes it a lot easier. Do you see it? Do you see the importance of this island now?
Yeah.
All right, from the British long-term planning, you can understand why Limos is very important to them. On Memo in East Prussia, the Germans begin their counteroffensive against the Russians. All right, you can see that they retake Memo. All right, the first German airship raid on Paris takes place. They fly over and drop a few freaking bombs. Doesn't do much. All right.
And that's an airship raid, so that's not airplanes. They're using, giant freaking.
They're using Zeppelins.
Yeah.
They're using Zeppelins. Now, the Zeppelins are the amount of bombs a Zeppelin can carry is significantly more than what these small little planes can carry. Okay, but the effectiveness, for all intents and purposes, are useless. On March 22nd, first thing I'll talk about is you see that the French prize court declares that the seizure of the SS Dacia, remember with the contraband, is legal. So the French are saying we declare it valid, so therefore it is now a seized ship. It is now ours. All right, basically taking it away from the Americans/Germans. All right. However, Premysl capitulates to the Russian forces, and it just shows you that back into this campaign, the Russians have successfully taken this area here. They've basically been successful all along this area here, and are now in control of a major rail line that they themselves can support. All right, as they go forward, processing their battle against the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and this is important. Right now, what it's not important, unfortunately, is that this is all great. All right. But Serbia is being reduced. Serbia hasn't capitulated yet, but they're well on their way to capitulating. They don't have much of a chance. They're basically hemmed in. Do you have any questions about this?
Well, yeah, actually, about the rail lines. In Europe, were they using a uniform gauge, or
no?
Is there a little bit of a problem at the borders with Russia?
No, they're not using a uniform gauge. They are having to change gauges, but the fact that the bed is already there, laying rail down is not that difficult, right? They can't do the kind of supply that the Germans can, They're not as industrialized, but it does give them, once again, they're not fighting the Germans. Now, why is this important? It shows you that the Russians are making headway. So one of the reasons that people wonder about, well, why would the Germans, why did the Russians stay in the war if they're getting their asses kicked so badly by the Germans? Well, yeah, they were losing battles against the Germans, but they were winning battles against the Austro-Hungarians. And what's more is that this is causing Germany, all right, to having to send their units further south, all right, to support the Austro-Hungarians. The Austro-Hungarians are their allies. They can't let them get knocked out of the war, right? So they're having to spread their forces now even thinner than what they want to. It's causing them to have to try and support the Austro-Hungarian Empire much more so than they expected, because they're not able to hold their own against the Russian juggernaut. And yet the Russians, don't think about this. Yeah, the Russians are losing battles against the Germans, but for the most part, they're kicking ass and taking names down in the south. So it's discouraging that they're losing battles against the Germans, but it's encouraging that they're winning battles, all right, against the Austro-Hungarian Empire. That make sense?
Yeah, no. Can you keep going? My son got hurt. He's crying. So
Okay. So the next day on March 23rd, the first kite balloon ship, the HMS Manka, is commissioned. Basically, it's you use up barrage balloons, and also you use these balloons for reconnaissance purposes. All right. The Chinese and the Japanese government conclude the secret agreement on the future policy of Manchuria. Basically, what this is China gives away all rights to Manchuria, more or less, all right, to Japan. All right, and they're saying that the Russians, who have a claim in this area, are going to be excluded. All right, that's why it's a secret agreement, because the Japanese don't want the Russians to know that the Chinese have basically given them carte blanche to take Manchuria. And this is going to have ramifications after the war more so than during the war, but still it's an important concept to understand that for all effective purposes, China is capitulated to Japan. So Japan is
well,
now.
and the big thing about the end of the war too, when it comes to Japan, is they feel slighted, and that's why they end up siding with Germany during World War II, right?
Right. Well, there's a lot of reasons why they side with Germany during World War II. All right. They actually wanted to initially make a deal with the British, right, in World War II, but that obviously was never going to happen. Okay. They wanted to create a bulwark against the Russians. Is what the Japanese wanted to do. All right. So that's where their focus is going to be on. That's where they're going to go with this focus.
Well, no, it's interesting that it's the Japanese and the Chinese governments that come into a secret agreement here, because the British really do a lot of underhanded secret agreements during this war, don't they?
Not during the war, but the British and really it's more the French have had more secret agreements than anybody else. There are certain secret agreements that the British were involved in. The British were aware of most of the quote unquote secret agreements that the French were doing. All right, but it wasn't a secret. It wasn't really much of a secret. What the British are doing are, they're saying they're trying to keep things secret, but the reality is they're not. I mean, these things are kind of up in the open, with the exception of what they're doing here in the Middle East. Their agreements for how to divide these areas up here, right? Because really, if you take a look at their plans, the secret agreements are more of, after we win the war, who gets what in these areas? How are we going to carve up the Ottoman Empire? Right? More than anything else, that's going to be the effect, and you're going to see ramifications of it.
Did the British have their eyes on Constantinople?
No, they've actually ceded Constantinople to the Russians. They've actually, in a communique, told the Russians that at the end of the war, Constantinople will be theirs. That's what the previous these discussions up here were. Let me see if I can find it.
Okay, so if the Russians don't end up going into revolution halfway through, they might still have Constantinople to this day, huh?
They possibly very well could have, but okay, we'll get to that in just a second here. The Indian Expeditionary Force F, which is in Egypt, now is included as part of the Indian Expeditionary Force. All right, which is gonna play a game in be part of the forces that sweep down.
Real quick though, press F for the Indians. No.
All right. You see that the Turco-German forces in the Dardanelles, they give the control to Lyman von Sanders. All right. The Dutch SS Media is captured by German submarine and sunk. The first neutral ship sunk after a visit in search. All right. And then you have this on March 27th. You have the Bosphorus forts are bombarded by the Russian Black Fleet. There are forts along here that Russia actually sends from Sevastopol and Odessa, all right, to actually attack these forts in an effort to try and, push their claims to saying, okay, we're the ones that are going to be in charge of this portion.
Is there a canal through Istanbul, through Constantinople?
No, there is a waterway. It's not a canal, but there is a waterway.
Okay, I didn't notice that before. So yeah, they can come right up on Constantinople almost, right?
Well, they can get to here, but the forts kind of prevent them from ever really shelling the city proper. But yeah, they can get fairly close, and they attempt to fight these forts. But once again, just like down here, where there's all sorts of nets of mines, all sorts of mines. There's mines all through here too. There's going to be no way. Now look how much tighter it would be to sail through this area here, the Bosphorus. Right?
Oh yeah, I'm not saying it'd be easy at all, but you could send some gunboats through there and try and shell Constantinople.
Sure. If there weren't any mines there, if there were no minefields. Kind of hard to get through there if there's a minefield. And guess what? The minefields are you have a lot less area to mine. So yeah, but the Russians do attempt. Now, what they're also doing is they're aware that the British are trying to take the Dardanelles. Right, so they're trying to at least relieve a little bit of pressure on their allies by doing that as well. But quite frankly, what else is the Black Sea Fleet going to do?
Does that work though? Does that divert some of the Turkish Navy to protect Istanbul?
No, not really, because they can't make any headway. The forts are too well protected. They basically bomb them for a while and then they go back. So, is it effective? No. Is it good? Showing good faith by are the Russians showing good faith to the alliance? Yes, they are showing. Look, we're allies. We're in this together by even doing something like that. But the reality is, if the Russians were serious, what they really should have done is, quite frankly, when this kicks off, the Russians should have been doing their own landings over here. Now, if you take a look at, and I wanted to do this is why I did this, you can see that there's no real beach landing areas, all right, that are not heavily inundated with all this.
Were those bridges there circa 1915?
No.
Okay.
No, I think there was one bridge that was through there, but not the rest of them. But you can see there's some decent beaches, what looks like decent beaches right here. But to move inland, how can you do that? It'd be very difficult. This terrain is just horrible, all right, to try and move forces through. And you got to remember, from a logistics standpoint, you got to keep these things supplied, right? And where they wanted to do things, of course, the forts, the Bosphorus forts are here in this area. And so they really want to take these forts. And you can see what the terrain is like. It's just mountainous as hell.
Well, I was wondering about the bridges, because that could be something they could do even with the mines, is break those bridges apart and hurt their transfer there.
Yeah, well, you would think that, but look how much they can easily move across. You once again in this area, how are they going to get over in this area where you can just shuttle people via just small boats right straight across there without any problem whatsoever?
Yeah, no, and you don't necessarily want to shell Constantinople. Just from a historical standpoint, you don't want to destroy that city. You don't want to level it.
Well, I think that I'll be honest with you. I don't think that they would have had a problem doing it if they could ever get to the point where they could get there to do it. But they were never going to. I mean, the Russians weren't foolish enough to believe that they could force these forts simply because of the minefields. You can, like I said, you can see how much tighter it is. This waterway, it's easy to mine this area. It's very easy to mine this area. All right, there's very little room on either side for you to sit.
Those bridges look shorter than the bridges connecting the keys, right? Like, that's not very wide.
Well, this is the key right here. It shows it's about 2,000 feet. So this is about 2,000 feet. So approximately 800 meters. 800 yards of bridge.
Yeah, that's nothing. I mean, that is really narrow.
Yeah. Is it large enough for these ships to sail through? Of course it is, but not when there's mines. You can't even dodge them. All right. And what's worse is one of the defensive techniques that they had is they said, okay, we're going to line these areas up and we'll have torpedoes, all right, where we can fire torpedoes from land. You got to sail on through here, and I've got a series of torpedo launchers. What are you going to do? Even if you launch a torpedo this way, right? Like, for example, you put a torpedo launcher here. Look what you command. How are the ships going to dodge?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even circa 2019, I don't know how you could take that waterway, to be honest.
Yeah, there's no taking this waterway. But like I said, the fact that they did the raid, all right, to try and at least to some degree coincide is showing good faith to your allies.
All right, so okay, so yeah, they're appointed to command at the Dardanelles. The Bosphorus forts are bombarded. Oh, the German submarines take out a passenger ship.
Yes, they do. Down with all loss of life, or major loss of life, I should say. So this is a big.
Did they know it was a passenger ship, or did they believe it was a merchant vessel?
Well, there's a lot of debate about that. The Germans claim that they thought it was just a regular merchant ship. Of course, there's no way of knowing. But then again, the British, they're using passenger ships to transfer cargo as well. Right? So is it technically a passenger ship? Yes, but is it actually supplying, war supplies to Great Britain? Yes, it is. It's doing that as well. So the German, when the Germans make that claim, of course, the British are like, no, we're not doing any of that. Bullshit. Okay. They aren't doing that. Now, at this point in time, how are you going to prove the British are lying? You can't prove the British are lying, right? How are you going to prove the British are lying? The freaking boats on the bottom of the ocean. But
Well, no, and on the very next day, you see once again the British throwing their weight around with the Americans. The British government concludes agreement with American rubber interests that rubber should not be exported except to Great Britain. That's not Great Britain and France, that's just Great Britain. Is there a reason for that?
a reason why the United States is supplying just the Allies?
Just Great Britain individually. It doesn't say the Allies. It doesn't say Great Britain and France and Italy. It says Great Britain.
Well, when they talk about U.S. rubber interests, they're talking about the United States has. All right, where are we getting rubber from?
South America, a majority of it, right?
Yes. All right. Let's go across the world. All right. This area down in here, because of the and also in Brazil we have a number of different rubber things. In fact, what's his name? Henry Ford has tried to create rubber plantations in several areas of this area. Okay. But who controls it? Who controls all the water down here? All right. Initially, you had some, small raiders from the from the Germans, but other than that, it's all under the control of the British Empire. You got to remember, I mean, the British have control. They got the Falkland Islands here, right? They have St. George's Island clear over here. They basically control this entire region with their navy. Our navy is. We have two navies, one here, one here. We have an East Coast and a West Coast Navy. But the British Navy is far larger, all right? And what's more is, remember, ships at this time have coal. This is one of the major coaling stations, all right, for the British right here. We have no coaling stations along this area. So how can we argue if the British say, well, give us your rubber and we'll allow it? Right?
Well, what about
you can only trade with us?
I hate to cut you off, MC, but the Monroe Doctrine, you're not allowed to operate in our hemisphere. That includes the British.
Well, but I mean, this is just, what are you supposed to say to them? Get out? Are you willing to go to war with Great Britain just to further American rubber plantations from Ford, from Henry Ford?
Good point. Good point.
Okay.
On the 30th of March, the South African forces take German West Africa. Does that affect Germany majorly? I don't think it does.
No, it doesn't. This is just part of this. Remember that they're marching from here on in, and there's other areas inside of here that they're basically being taken. But for the most part, it's just showing you that there are battles going on here. They're inconsequential to the actual, the bigger battles that are taking place here. And the ramifications are basically going to just be Germany is going to be kicked out of Africa. That's really what the results are going to be.
Okay, well, overall, we are now approaching the end of this week's episode, but it seems to me that the Americans are just kind of rolling over for the British at this point in time. Or am I wrong in that assessment?
No. The United States, for all intents and purposes, the United States merchant fleets are basically obeying whatever the British are telling them worldwide, because they don't expect the United States to sit up there and back them up. And to be quite frankly, they're making deals that are to the benefit of the British, but they're paying well. So from a merchant standpoint, yeah, it's kind of annoying, but at the same time, it pays well. What do I care? I don't have a dog in the fight, right?
And Germany seems to be kind of on its on the reaction, right? They're not necessarily acting; they're reacting.
Correct. There's no real offensive that's taking place aside from they're getting ready to build an offensive against the Russians. All right. In fact, they would have already had sprung a major offensive against the Russians, except for the losses of the Carpathians. in this area here. This action here is actually delaying the Germans from going on their offensive further north.
Well, no, and that's the thing too, is the Austro-Hungarian Empire is really dead weight for the Germans at this point and forward, right?
They're beginning to get that opinion. Yes, that opinion is growing. Now, what's interesting at this point in time is Italy at this point is neutral. Don't forget this. Italy hasn't entered the war yet.
Yeah, you're right. Italy is just standing back, and they're going to be quite opportunistic, I should say, not optimistic.
Yeah, they're going to try and yes, that's exactly right. They're going to attempt to go, aha, it looks like the Allies are winning, so therefore, before it all falls apart, we're going to snatch up ours. Why? Because the battles for the that the Austro-Hungarians are involved in are not succeeding. Okay, they're not being successful. It looks as it's only a matter of time before the Allies, win, and they want their piece of the pie. So they're gonna jump in and basically go, aha, it's our turn to snatch up some territories. It isn't going to work out that well, but they're going to do it.
Absolutely. And next week we move on to April. It looks like there's some more action in the Black Sea. And the Indians are on the move in Mesopotamia. So
yes,
that looks like that'll be what we're covering next week. Unless you're headed out of town.
Nope. I'm not headed out of town that I know of. So next week should be fine.
All right, awesome. Are you doing your morning show tomorrow?
I will be doing my morning show tomorrow. I will be talking about a number of things, including an issue from the Oregon students can now take mental health days from school.
Ooh, nice. Yay.
That will just be one of the stories that I will be talking about.
All right, everybody. Thank you for coming out and listening to us ramble about World War I for an hour. We'll be back to do it next Sunday. Good night, good luck, and don't go to France.